Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're out in the bush again. I've got a knife for you that at least partially is a good outdoors blade for you. So I wanted to film it out here. You can probably tell if you were here the last time we filmed, there's quite a significant change. Everything has greened up. Spring is finally coming. Now we're going through a bit of a cold spell, so hopefully the wind, there's a cold front moving through and the wind is pretty heavy, but I think I'm in a quiet enough spot here that it won't interfere much. Let's scroll down and take a look at the knife for discussion today, which is the Jarosz Globetrotter. Now, if you're not familiar with Jesse Jarosz, you should be. He's got a couple of collaborations that he's done with K-Bar. I think I'm going to say 2 folders and 2 fixed blades, but I could be selling them a little short there. And then, of course, he's got his own work where there's at least 3 or 4 different fixed blades that he does and a couple of folders, maybe more than a couple, actually 3 folders. I think there's a small slip joint as well. So fairly prolific maker. Jesse does a really, really nice job. And what we have here today is the Globetrotter. Now the sheath was not done by Jesse, so we'll get to the sheath in a second. But I've got to tell you, the Globetrotters are gone now, so they aren't available as of the recording of this. However, if you give Jesse a follow over on Instagram, he does, continually do runs of these. And so if you follow him and pay attention and you want one, you should be able to get one, in the next group that he does. If you're really curious, I should have done this before, but I didn't. But you can definitely send him a message over on Instagram. He's quite prompt to get back to people. At least he's always been quite prompt with me. Yeah, so you can send him a message over there and see when more Globetrotters might be available. Probably, it seems like once a year or so he does a run. And I got the very last, like there were only 3 or 4 of this run left when I picked up this one. So one run has been gone and over with for a few months now. And so it's probably not that much longer until he's producing more. He does have a really nice, a larger size fixed blade. Not way larger than this, but I think probably a 4-inch blade rather than a 3.5 or 3.25 inch blade like this guy. And that I think is available now. Hopefully I'm not lying to you. You can go over to his Instagram, give him a follow, send him a message, or you can go on his website as well. And I'll put the website in the description box down below, and that'll tell you as well what he has available. If you click on like shop or whatever, it'll only show you stuff that you can currently buy. All right, so that's a quick rundown on Jesse. I have previously not only have I had his K-Bar collaboration folder, but I've had a custom, I guess, mid-tech folder of his, and this is a mid-tech as well. I've got to say, finally, in talking about this particular knife, the Globetrotter, and you could probably say a similar thing for the other stuff that he does, they're quite affordable when it comes to, custom mid-tech stuff. It's easy to get into, hundreds and hundreds or thousands of dollars. This knife was $100. Now I think they regularly go for 125, and so he dropped it by 25 bucks to clear them out at the end. And so I got a bit of a deal there, which is great. But frankly, to get a mid-tech knife for $100 or even $125 or even $150 if he was charging that much, and maybe if the materials were different, that would be the case. Anyway, either way, even if it's a little bit more than I paid, it's a great price for a really well put together knife. And we'll take a look. But to have a mid-tech level knife, that's pretty impressive in terms of price point. Now, let's finally get to the specs. I know I've talked a lot about this knife and about the background and about Jesse Jarosz, the maker, but I feel like he doesn't get enough credit in the knife world. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about him than I sometimes talk about makers in my videos. Anyway, this knife in particular, let's get the specs on it so that you have an idea of whether or not this fits your needs. This guy is 7 9/16 overall, so a little over 7.5 inches. Blade length is 3 3/8. 4 1/8 on the handle there, 3 3/4 inch grip area, which you can see in my hand. It gives me quite a bit of space. I don't have any issue with that grip area. And the knife alone, okay, just the knife, 3.9 ounces. So 3.9 ounces is not like crazy super light or anything, but it's definitely quite comfortable in terms of use and carry and all that kind of stuff. With the sheath, you're going to add a bit of weight. Let me put this all together for you so you can kind of envision what I'm talking about here. By the way, I've got the G-clip. There are other options available that are going to affect this total number a little bit. So with the sheath, this is going to be 6.3 ounces, and the length is going to be 8 3/8. Obviously, the clip doesn't affect that, just the weight. So if you went with a different clip, you might have a different weight if it was heavier or lighter. You get the picture there. So I'll talk about, normally I talk about how this carries at this point, but because this is a fixed blade, it's a little bit of a different discussion. So let's go ahead and carry on to the blade, and we'll talk about how this carries when we get to our sheath portion of the video. So AEB-L steel, stonewash, very high flat grind. You can see that it's not super thick blade stock. Okay, it's around 1/8 of an inch thick, which makes this a very nicely balanced blade. This is definitely a knife that you can use for almost everything, right? If you're cutting up food around camp, if you're skinning, if you're doing some bushcrafting stuff, it's thin enough behind the edge and takes a nice enough edge that it's going to work for all of those tasks very, very well. Let me just do a couple little quick cuts with you here so that you can kind of get an idea about what I'm talking about. Sorry guys, I don't have any really nice lumber to deal with. This is very soft, so I'm going to see if I can maybe just clean off some of that soft stuff from the outside. Everything is soaked here. We've had a couple of days of rain. So now that I've kind of gotten down to some harder wood, you can see that nice thin edge really is going to do a great job for slicing tasks. And yeah, look at that. It just goes through that material so comfortably. And look, guys, this is not, you could do some light batoning with this for sure. You could definitely, would I hesitate to take this and just pound it into that? No, I wouldn't worry about that whatsoever. I think it would take that kind of use. That's why we carry fixed blades in the bush. But it is a little thinner. So it's not, the survival type of, the survival knife type of setup that sometimes we have on the channel, and like some of the knives that I've got here to do comparisons with that are maybe a little more heavy duty, but still it's very, very nicely done and highly functional. I carry this, and so here's what I want to say about the blade before we carry on. So I carry this all the time, not just in the bush, and that's what I really like about it. The versatility that this has to work just fine out here if I'm going hiking, if I'm getting a fire ready, doing an overnight with my boys, something like that, works great. But in addition, I carry this just clipped on my my waistband all the time. And it works for opening packages or cutting up food, or sometimes my youngest son will decide that his hot dog should be cut in pieces so he can dip it individually. Well, guess what? This knife will do all of that stuff, and that's where I really feel like this shines. It can go outdoors, it can go, and it can really go anywhere and do anything. It's just a really nicely balanced blade. It's not super thin like a kitchen knife where it's too thin to do any kind of work, but it's ground well enough that it can do that kind of slicey kitchen work, as well as take it out in the bush and baton with, do some light batoning with it. So overall, great blade, really nicely balanced. The only little hiccup that exists here is right by my finger there. You can see there's a little bit of a recurve developing, and that's how it came. I've sharpened this, but I haven't spent enough time with it to actually remove that. And now you could remove it with your sharpening stone pretty easily, but that sharpening choil, it could be a little bit bigger. Like if you just took it out to the tip of my thumbnail there. I know my nails are dirty, guys, by the way. I've been doing some car work, so that's what happens. But if you had taken it out to the tip of my thumbnail there, it would just kind of remove that and clean it up just a little bit. And of course, I may do that myself. It's a pretty easy, change to make. So Blade, I think it's very, very nicely done. I do like, by the way, the Maker's Mark. It's not crazy, you know, overstated and super noticeable. It's just kind of there and not really in your face, which I gotta say I appreciate. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the handle. The handle we talked about a little bit in the introduction, or I mean in the first impressions on this knife. It's rich light. So at the time, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I've seen a couple of other knives done with rich light. I've also, you know, when I went over to their website and started looking at what they do, it's a very, very hard material. So they use it for, I think I mentioned this, guitar fretboards. They use it for anything where, you know, something's got to see a lot of wear and tear and needs to hold up. That's where this material shines. What I like about it is if you feel it, it's very, very smooth. Like it's, you know, there's no heavy texturing on this of any kind, but it's got a tactility to it where it, you know, when you grab a hold of it, it really gives a lot of friction. So really, really nice material for knife handles. And the cool thing about this, I'll be interested to see what else they, either Jesse or other makers do with it, because if you look on the website, the variations that they can do and the different colors and different patterns are, you know, just innumerable. So that gives a maker a lot of options. And I'm sure if you were looking at doing a custom, sorry, I got another knife here peeking into the video. If you were looking at doing, you know, a full custom build, it would give you a lot of options in terms of what you could do for those handle scales and the colors and the layers that are available. So to me, I think the rich light is a good choice. It looks really great. It finishes up nicely. It can be very smooth, but also add a good tactile feel. So very nice material. I'm pretty impressed with it. Now, in terms of the comfort and all of that, well, I guess we should go over. It's a full tang knife. You got a little bit of exposed tang down here for a lanyard, or to use for, you know, sort of an impact option if you needed that. Now I'm wrecking my background here, but very comfortable, full tang knife. Everything is nicely sort of finished off. I don't have any complaints whatsoever. Now, in terms of comfort in hand, I should make some comments about that, and that is very, very nice. Now, we've talked about this before, guys, but when you see a contoured handle like this, guess what? Generally speaking, it's going to be pretty comfortable. If this was totally squared off, you know, maybe we'd have to have some further conversation about the comfort, but, you know, it's a pretty safe assumption when you see everything rounded and contoured like that, that it's going to be pretty comfortable, and this certainly is. Let's see, what else have we got to say? Oh yeah, let's move over to the Kydex. Now, I should make very clear that the sheath was not done by Jesse. All right, when I contacted him, I said, hey, you know, I'm going to need a sheath for this. Got any, you know, who does them type of thing? He said, yeah, here's a couple of Instagram accounts that you can look up. One of them was David Brown, which is by Brown Industries. And I contacted him. There's an email address on his Instagram. And I think, by the way, if you go to his Instagram page, he says something about, hey, I don't check DMs or something like that. So use my email address, and then the email address is there. So I, not noticing that, sent him a DM. And, you know, I'm one of those people who don't, I throw all the instructions away to the stuff that I'm working with as well. So I don't follow instructions very well, and I didn't in this case. Anyway, I was like, man, it's weird that I haven't heard back from him. But then I looked back and I was like, oh yeah, you need to email him. So anyway, email him. He was quite quick to respond then. I kind of told him what I was looking for. He, you know, made this up for me pretty promptly. You know, they're not just sitting there ready to ship out. There's probably a week and a half to 2 week turnaround time. Now, not super cheap. I think this sheath was $65, which, you know, is not outlandish, but any kind of custom work that you get done, it's not going to be super cheap. And then, you know, I think there was shipping on top of that. So that's probably, you know, it does add to the overall cost of this knife. The G-clip certainly added as well. But the sheath is very well done. And I specifically told them, you know, I wanted something pretty low profile and something that I could clip to my pants. If you want a leather sheath, that's an option too. And I don't remember, I'd have to go back through my DMs with Jesse and find out who the leather guy was. I may have mentioned it in my first impressions video as well. The whole transaction was a little fresher in my mind back then. Overall, I like the sheath quite a bit. It does do exactly what I requested that it do. The only drawback I have here is the retention is not quite as tight as I would have liked. I'd like a little bit more of a snap there than there is. Now, as it stands, it's absolutely usable. It's comfortable. I wear it and use it all the time without being scared that I'm gonna, drop the knife or something like that. I would just like to see it a little bit snappier in terms of locking in. All right. So yeah, big win on the Sheath, and you can see there's lots of options here in terms of how I was going to attach this. Even with the G-clip, I could make some changes and carry it in some different configurations. So quite happy with the Sheath. David Brown did a really, really nice job with it. And in terms of use and carry, it does exactly what I want it to do, which is, if I've got a belt on, I can put a belt through here. But most of the time, I don't wear a belt, so I can clip this over my waistband, and it works just fine. Okay, so now that we've gotten through the blade, the handle, and the sheath, that's pretty much everything we care about. Let's grab some comparisons here. I've got a number of different ones, not as many as I often have, because this is a little bit of a smaller knife. Let's start out with a knife that has a similar sort of philosophy behind it. This is the Kaiser Harpoon. I really, really like this knife. And it does have a similar philosophy. So 1095 steel, it's not going to hold an edge quite as well. And I do like the plain finish rather than the black finish. But having said all of that, pretty versatile knife. Again, good for out here in the bush, good for EDC type of stuff. The sheath is Kydex as well. The big difference here is in terms of carry, you don't have the options. You've got to wear a belt, and it's got these straps sort of set up for scout carry, which is okay, but not nearly as enjoyable as the G-clip. And of course, the price point is considerably different on that. Let's bring in a knife that everyone is familiar with. This, of course, is the Mora Companion. All of you guys know about this knife. You may have seen it on this channel already. Great fixed blade, very popular. There's a good reason for that. The one thing that this knife does that this one, this knife does that this one doesn't do, is have a great deal of versatility. The Mora is fantastic, but with that Scandi ground edge, it's great for bushcrafting type stuff. But if you get it back to the campsite, at least for me, I don't like using a Scandi grind for food prep. It's just too abrupt, right? There's too much of an angle here. This is something much more, to me, comfortable to use for a wider variety of tasks. All right, so the thing about the Mora is it's pretty affordable, so you could easily have the Mora on you in addition to this and use kind of one around camp and one for other stuff. Let's grab a couple other knives. One that's only moderately comparable is going to be the Nyala. Definitely, this would be a good place to go if you feel like this is just not heavy duty enough. If you really want to up the beefiness and the heft of your knife, this is going to be a good option. I will get to a review of this. I really, really like it, so I've got to spend some more time with it before I feel like I can be even anywhere close to objective with my discussion on the Nyala. Finally, what is probably one of my favorite fixed blades of all time, the Lion Steel M4. I adore this knife. Now, the leather sheath I don't like as much as the Kydex. If you could put this sheath, I know it's possible, guys. This sheath on this knife would really make it even that much better. As it stands, I just, if I want to carry the M4, which I do a lot, a couple days a week usually, I'll just go and wear a belt with it. And the M4, by the way, the reason I like the M4 so much is it's very, very similar. It's a little beefier, a little more heavy duty, but it's got that same sort of utility feel where I think, it doesn't really matter what I need to do. Am I in the bush? Am I, in town? Is it working as an EDC knife, a kitchen knife, a camp knife? It can do all of that pretty decently. So that's where I feel like the M4 fits a similar bill to this. So really, really great. Okay, what are my overall thoughts on the Jesse Jarosz Globetrotter? Look, guys, I think this is a great knife. I enjoy it's beautiful, it's well put together, it's versatile, it's easy to carry, and the value is definitely there. Even when you pay, $65 or so for the sheath, you're still $165 into a mid-tech knife, which is very, very reasonable. So Very hard to beat. I like this a lot. And of course, if you're making your own sheath or looking to other makers, you might be able to find better options out there. I just happen to use at Brown Industries or by Brown Industries because he was sort of Jesse's highest recommendation. That's one thing that I figure I'll mention in conclusion. That's the only, if there's anything I could say is a takeaway, it would be nice to see this ship with a sheath. I don't, I'm guessing, but I can't imagine too many people are buying this straight from Jesse, never intending to have a sheath for it. A knife like this, you're not going to put it in a kitchen drawer. I think this is a knife you're going to want to carry and use on your person, either for camping or hiking or, whatever, EDC. And so, I would like to see that transition to, let's just have sheaths readily made for, if you're making 100, I don't know, do 100 sheaths, or at least do 30 or 40, so that there's some people who can buy it directly with a sheath. Anyway, that's about my only complaint, and frankly it's a pretty minor one because this is a very, very well done knife. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to go check out Jesse on Instagram. Might as well follow me as well if you're going over there. We'll talk to you soon.